It can sometimes feel like this when you're planning a wedding.
No. The numbers will give you a heart attack.
$100,000, you're never gonna get married, honey.
I don't think there's enough people talking about this.
Because in weddings, while everyone thinks they know how much things could cost, the secret here is that nobody knows anything. So in today's video, I am not gonna tell you what the perfect budget is, because that is between you and the people who are paying for your wedding. I'm gonna give you a crash course on where to start allocating your wedding budget. We are going to talk about our common wedding cost traps and how to avoid them. And you're gonna hear from real couples, some of them weddings that I've shot on those last minute moments that tend to blow your budget. I'm sorry you couldn't come to our wedding. No, you were not in the budget for the wedding. You're gonna hire wedding vendors to bring your vision to life. And you probably already have some sort of idea of what you want your overall wedding budget to be. On average, you'll hire around 24 different vendors to bring your wedding vision to life. But that means if we're using 24 different vendors on your wedding day, that there are 24 different opportunities to potentially go over budget. You're also working with different business models for every single one of those small businesses. Some of them you'll pay by the hour, others you'll pay per person, and others you'll pay based on the scope and the scale of the actual wedding event itself. $35,000, which is, again, according to the Knott's Real Wedding Survey, the average wedding cost in 2023, 37%, which is $13,000, will go to your venue. Now for the venue, this isn't typically just the space where you get married and have a reception. It can also include staff, security, and sometimes even rentals and decorations. 28%, which is about $10,000, will go to catering. This could include tasting, service staff on the night of your wedding, and not just for dinner. It can also include food during your cocktail hour and maybe even a late night snack. $4,200 will go to your band or DJ. This is important because this is the entertainment for your night. This cost may cover the sound equipment and lighting. Now these are three of, on average, about the 24 main vendor categories that will be a part of your wedding day. We can start there. If you're lost on where to start or how to start, I'll link it down below, the Knott's budgeting tool.
So maybe the Knott's budgeting tool feels overwhelming because you don't even know what vendors you want to work with and you're still at stage one. ChatGPT can be a good tool to just start visualizing how a budget can come together. Let me show you.
Okay, so let's plug in $100,000, a guest count of 100 people in a major city, and ask how we should allocate our budget. This ChatGPT by no means should be how you actually set your budget, but it's another way to see how all of the pieces fit together and give you an idea of how you can begin this process. One thing that I really want to stress is that there are three main drivers of your wedding budget. Typically, this is going to be your location. Getting married in Nebraska is going to have different costs than getting married in New York City. Who you invite. 10 people is going to cost and look different than 100 people. Everybody's number one piece of advice when it comes to cutting costs in your wedding is to cut your guest list. Let's set that aside, because in my experience, the real driver of cost in weddings is personalization. Now I get it, you don't want your wedding to be cookie cutter. You don't want it to be like every wedding that you see online. The beautiful things about weddings is that you can personalize everything, down from the cups of water to the goodie bag that they'll walk out with at the end of your wedding. And all of those options that I just mentioned cost money. But my advice, if you really want to stick to the budget that you made, is to match your personalization to your priorities. What do I mean by that? If you and your partner are foodies, spend the most money on your catering. If you love to dance, spend your money on a really dope band or DJ. If you're so into fashion, let's get into the nitty-gritties of your wedding day attire and the one of your partner. Or maybe if you love photos, we're going for that photo booth. Or a wedding content creator to capture as many angles as possible. If any of the categories that I mentioned make you go, then don't feel the pressure to invest big in them or even hire them at all. Now, I asked 30,000 people something they forgot to budget for in their wedding. There are four main categories that came up that you are not gonna fall victim to. We're gonna chat about them right here. Now, the first one is a rain plan. If you have an indoor component of your venue, then this one probably doesn't pertain to you. But if any of your wedding is going to be outside, most venues are gonna require you to have some sort of rain plan, i.e. maybe renting out a tent or an additional space. And sometimes for these tents, they require extra labor, extra insurance, and again, these become extra costs for you. Now, another one that came up a bunch is lighting. And this is something that really didn't surprise me, because most of the time when you tour your wedding venue, you're touring it during the day. And when you tend to have your ceremony or your reception, that tends to happen at night. So if you haven't seen your venue at night, you have no idea what it looks like all put together. So when you see photos or you see videos and they have string lighting or maybe they have disco lighting, those are things that come at an additional cost. And this is something that you should 100% ask your venue about. Maybe this is something that your band or DJ can supply, or for a lot of the weddings that we work, couples will hire an additional lighting vendor to come in and make all of your lighting dreams come true. Now, we couldn't do things to consider to put in your wedding budget without talking about transportation. I would always recommend hiring private transportation to take you from point A to point B. Ride shares aren't necessarily the most reliable. A lot of weddings that we work will have a room block somewhere and they'll provide shuttles to the actual wedding itself. Some will provide Uber codes. So like that just becomes something that typically you don't think about until you start getting into the day of logistics, which may not happen until a couple months out from the actual wedding. We also want to think about alterations and accessories. Typically in your budget, you'll have a line item for attire. Now this will be your dress, this will be your suit, and you might say, hey, that line item is $5,000. So you go to your dress appointment and you say, my budget is $5,000. Now your stylist is probably going to bring you a dress that's $49.95. And by the time you get the dress, add in taxes and fees, talk about alterations, add in a veil or something else, you're at $8,000. So you're not gonna make that mistake. It's important to be mindful of what that overall budget is, how much you're willing to spend on your wedding day attire, and then all of the accessories that are gonna support it. When it comes to wedding budgets, people have big opinions and bad advice. And that's because fundamentally the wedding industry is different from the 1990s, the 1980s. Weddings vary so much from market to market. So as you start to build your wedding budget, my biggest piece of advice that I can give is to tune everybody else out. Weddings are stressful enough without everybody telling you what you should spend, how you should spend your money, and where you should allocate the most of your money. So look, there you have it. My best tips and tricks. We talked about hidden costs and things to look out for as you set your wedding budget. Remember that there is no one way to plan a wedding, and there is no one way on how you should allocate your budget. Plan wisely, save where you can, and most importantly, enjoy the journey because you only get to do this once. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and do all the things that you're supposed to do on YouTube.